You've decided you're ready to become a parent, and suddenly you're overwhelmed with people who feel they have the right to inform you on the correct way to conceive, give birth, what fears you should have, and the proper way to parent. How do you filter through the opinions? How do you know what's trustworthy information and what's a myth or just plain outdated? Welcome to the Birth Ease podcast. Join your host Michelle Smith and her guests as they cut through the noise and fear by sharing valuable tips, tools, and proven methods that help you connect with your own inner wisdom as you navigate the sacred journey that is pregnancy, birth, and parenthood in a more relaxed and confident manner. This podcast does not constitute, nor is it intended, as medical advice.
Hello, Birth Ease families. Welcome to your reprieve from the noise and the stress that can often accompany pregnancy, birth, and parenthood. I'm your host, Michelle Smith. On today's podcast, I'm incredibly honored to have my mentor, Kathy Bradley, here with us. We will be discussing the ways that a doula can reduce fear and stress during the childbearing year. Spanning a 30-year career in maternal health, Kathy is the visionary behind Childbirth Concierge. She holds a degree in communication and public relations and is a certified childbirth consultant as well as a board-certified lactation consultant. Kathy's focus over the years has been providing education and support to women of all income levels. She worked for 14 years in maternal health at Winnie Palmer Hospital here in Orlando, Florida. As the founder and executive director of the former Childbirth Enhancement Foundation, she developed partnerships and training programs for community-based doula programs with 14 hospitals. Kathy developed the Community Outreach Perinatal Educator Program for Common Sense Childbirth Incorporated, a nonprofit institution dedicated to eliminating racial disparities and class disparities in perinatal health and improve birth outcomes for all. She is strongly motivated to support women no matter how they choose to birth or feed their babies. As a mother of 5, Kathy truly understands the challenges families face preparing for birth and caring for their newborns. A born teacher, she is in her element teaching new parents and health professionals. Welcome, Kathy, to the Birth Ease podcast. I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to spend time with you here today.
Thanks, Michelle. It is a delight to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. And before we dive into the value that a doula can provide families, can you share a bit about your journey in the maternal health field?
It was interesting. As a young kid growing up in a foreign country, I always had a vision of being a CEO. I don't know why. I guess when you're a born leader, it really does impress upon you at a young age. I would have never have seen myself in the maternal health field. When I went to have my first baby, I had a OB practice with certified nurse midwives. We went to the childbirth education classes, and then I ended up with being preeclamptic and having a 26-hour induction, which I did without pain meds, simply because epidurals of that day are different than they were of today. And after that experience, it left me kind of like, what the heck just happened? So I began my journey of learning and understanding, and really how I ended up in the doula role is I had a girlfriend who was pregnant about 6 months behind me. She had gone to one childbirth class and her water broke at 36 weeks, and she called me and said, "Can you come to the hospital? I don't even know how I'm supposed to breathe." And so of course I up and went, and it was a pretty quick delivery. And when I was done, I came home and told my husband, like, "This is what I need to do." And he's like, "You need to be a labor and delivery nurse." I'm like, "No, I want to be with the moms." And he goes, "Oh, you want to be a doctor?" I'm like, "No." And I couldn't even describe, because really back in 1989, how we understand doula today really didn't even exist. I mean, women have always been with women from the beginning of time, but as we understand it today, it didn't exist. So that's really where hook, line, and sinker #birth junkie came from, was from that delivery. And I have to say that that little baby has now just earned her master's degree a year ago.
Oh, it's so exciting.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about doulas and your different programs you've had to train doulas. I trained with you. It's 20 years ago now. And I really feel that your program is the best out there. There's so much more required. We have to attend more births to become certified. And I think all of that is so vital to really serve families more thoroughly.
Well, of course, back when we started, the word doula wasn't even around. We used the word childbirth assistant because doula, in its original form, Greek meaning mothering the mother, took on more to be the postpartum. And it wasn't really till Donna came around, I believe, like 1992, 93, that it began the understanding of a woman with woman during the birth piece of it. So back, when I started, and I have to laugh, I borrowed $150 from my mother and I mowed her yard to earn the money to go to this childbirth assistant training
Wow.
in Tampa from an organization out of California. That's where I started. And how it evolved and really how we came about the training or the requirements of what we currently have today is, at what point did I begin to feel comfortable with understanding birth, having a pretty good grasp of it, being able to support women and have an understanding of what generally goes on in the birth process and then at the varying facilities, whether it be home, hospital, or birth center. And so that's how we kind of set the training requirements. And over the years, I will tell you that anyone that earns their certification with us truly feels like they know what they're doing. Now, we'll never know everything because that's just the humanness, is we're always learning. But as far as having that well-rounded understanding of your role, of the nurse's role, the physician's role, how the varying aspects, how labor can play themselves out, I really feel that those that are certified with us really do have a good grasp of what's going on.
Yes, I agree. Can you delve more deeply into the benefits that doulas can provide families?
Sure. The studies that were done, and originally when this really started coming around, like I said, in the early 90s, one of the original studies actually was done in Guatemala, and they had three different controls. Someone who just sat in the room, didn't even know the family, didn't interact. Then somebody who was a little bit more, would speak to them, talk to them, and of course, somebody then who was trained. And the outcome showed that as you went up through those controls, you got better outcomes. And we look at the outcomes as, what were your C-section rates? What were your infection or sepsis rates? What was epidural rate? So we can quantify in statistical pieces like that. But I think in the years to come, we will even see more that is harder to quantify in the support that we provide. When we look at historically women giving birth, we were in our family pods, if you will. There were homesteads, you were in communities, you were very entrenched in that. And we did not have the flexibility, the mobility to move around like we do today. We look at cars being created, airplanes, shipping industries, all of that. And I'm talking about 100, 200, 300 years back, we stayed very connected within our community. And the women were with women, and we helped giving birth. We supported one another in that. As time rolled around, and birth became more populated to the hospitals, we became a much more mobile society. Although we benefit from those advances, also what has happened is we now have disconnected more from our families of origin, our communities, if you will, growing up. So how the doula, in my opinion, really helps is for a woman to feel connected to somebody who believes in her, who is willing to help her through the process, is there to guide, give evidence based information. And so the value, I love the MasterCard commercials, right? That it's priceless. So really the doula and the value of what we do, in my opinion, is very priceless, above and beyond just reducing infection rates, reducing the hours of labor, reducing infection rates. It's so much more to that. And it's very hard to get a new family to really grasp what that benefit and that value is. Oftentimes I have families will later on the backside say, wow, that was so much more than what I ever thought, because it's just hard to, right? Birth, in my opinion, is like a a student in high school learning to drive. You go to the classes, you go to the driver's ed, you watch the videos, you learn don't drink and drive, you learn to put your turn signal on so far before this. We learn all of that. And that's one level of learning. But until you actually get in that car, you turn it on, you push the gas pedal, you apply the brakes, you try to take that thing around a corner. It's a different being in that process. And so birth, I always feel as a childbirth educator, that's kind of when I have those first time moms is I'm trying to prepare them for something that we're doing the best to educate in a situation we really don't know all the moving parts and pieces. We have an idea, but each birth is so individual, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think what a lot of families don't realize going into this is that your physician, if they're even on call the day that you give birth, but your physician may be with you maybe an hour. It's probably going to be less. And the nurses are going to be going in and out. And you're really laboring there alone. And a lot of times there's medical jargon and you really don't understand what's going on. And it's so easy to get overwhelmed in that situation. Again, I just don't think people realize that they're not going to get the support that they think through every contraction.
Right. And it's not even that the doctors won't or can't, or the nurses won't or can't. Well, I guess in some aspects, nurses are managing other patients. There's a lot that has shifted over time in the medical community. Doctors are managing many other patients. And so that continuity of care becomes very valuable. My understanding is back when birth moved to the hospital and you went to your obstetrician, we say that you met Nurse Nancy. And that was Mr. Smith. Dr. Smith's nurse was Nurse Nancy. And when Dr. Smith went to the hospital to have a baby, he called Nancy, and Nancy came with him and assisted in that delivery. So even at that, you had a continuity of care of face. You had your OB and you had your nurse. And then as insurance companies and managed care and all of this management of all of those pieces, we now are even moving into what we call hospitalists. So there are obstetricians offices who employ hospitalists. They provide your care in the office, and now you're going to get a qualified obstetrician in the hospital who you've never met before. So even at a time where, and I remember almost 15 years ago thinking in my head, oh no, that'll never happen. And here we are. And I understand why, but it doesn't change what the human need is to be able to connect and feel comfortable with somebody. And that's where the doula really can enhance that. Is you've met her prior, you've gotten to know her, she knows you, she's learned what's important to you, and she's there to actually help carry out and facilitate that to the best of to everyone's ability during labor and provide that continuity of care.
Exactly, exactly. I feel that continuity of care is so vital. That's what attracted me to becoming a doula because I discovered it was missing with my second birth. I had 19 different doctors in the practice, and I remember the relief I felt when my physician showed up. So I think that is really invaluable because women need to be able to go within and work with their body and feel safe and supported. And that's something that that continuity of care does.
Right. And anytime you think about any kind of stressful situation we've ever been in, if you've ever been stranded, or I mean, there's a myriad of things I could think of. When you see somebody that you know, there's an instant, somebody's here. They know me. Thank God, right? And so think about that in terms of going through one of the most memorable experiences of your life. And that memory can be positive or negative depending on the situation that unfolds, to have somebody that you are connected with. And that is, I think, just the valuable piece of the doula.
Yeah.
Yes, your advantage, yes, do you get typically lower C-section rates? Absolutely. Do you get shorter hours of labor? Yes. But it's that connectedness of feeling somebody is there, somebody is listening to you, somebody is hearing you. That's what's very important.
I agree. I feel like that's part of what can make a birth experience more positive if things aren't going the way that a mama anticipated and planned. If she is
Oh
listened
gosh,
to, yeah, if she's
yeah.
listened to.
Yes, and the experience that you and I have of years of being bedside with patients in labor is you and I both know birth doesn't always end up in a vaginal, beautiful scene, skin to skin with mom and baby. There are times when things turn very quickly and there are emergent things that need to be done. I just had one not that long ago that we're laboring naturally, everything's going fine, mom's complete, we start pushing, and all of a sudden we have baby's heart rate crashing down. And it ended up being that this cord was wrapped like 2 or 3 times around the neck. And, I often wondered, gosh, if we were 300 years ago and this was happening, what would have transpired? And most likely we would have had a baby that would not have gone on to live. I don't know that it would have survived. Thank goodness we do have the medical care that we have today. So even when something like that goes down, having somebody there supporting you, looking at you and saying, it's okay. The hospital's doing everything it needs to do. You keep looking at me. I need you to breathe. Breathe for your baby. I need you to stay calm. Look at me. Look at your partner. That is so key. It doesn't guarantee that birth's going to be perfect every time. And when it's not, wow, even to have somebody there that's going to stand with you through that is very valuable.
I really think we can help mitigate the overwhelm and the feelings of I'm not sure. And when something is going down, if it's a caregiver that someone doesn't know, I believe that we doulas help them to navigate those decisions because sometimes, there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet and stories of, oh, my physician forced me into this. I really didn't need to have this procedure. And if we doulas can help these families to mitigate and work through these stressful situations to say, yes, I know this isn't the way you wanted your birth to go. And in my experience, your physician is correct. A cesarean is the best route for your birth. And I know that's not what you wanted, but we're going to work through this together.
Right, exactly. And and the reality is in any profession, you have the good, bad, and the ugly, if you will. And so are there some providers out there that are more inclined quickly to do C-sections? Absolutely. Everybody doesn't always come to the table with non-biases, if you will. And so we are that sounding board too of helping them work through, and ideally the doula empowers. That's really ultimately what I really like to see doulas do, is empower the mother to make the decisions that are correct for her and her baby at that time. It's never our decision, but we empower her to make the decisions that work for them.
Yes, I agree. I agree. So that leads me to the question of what are your suggestions for a family that is considering having a doula support them in their pregnancy and birth? How do you recommend they interview their doula? What do you feel like is good to look for? That type of thing.
Right. Well, like I just said, everybody has a different way of practicing, different ways of coming to the table with their profession. So, one of the quickest ways to do is usually most women are in their childbearing years. So, are your friends, do any close of friends or acquaintances, have they used doulas, and can you recommend anybody? If you're in an area where you're just not in that season of your life, and you find yourself not able to use that option, then I would go to your provider and ask them, do they have anybody that they really like to work with? And if they do, then absolutely look into it. If they don't, then I would do that good old Google search, internet. When you interact with a doula, and usually it's a phone call, a doula should kind of ask you, what are you looking for in a doula? What is your motivation for that? And so as the doula, is asking you questions, then you also want to ask the questions about the doula. What is your years of experience? How long have you been working? Do you know my provider? Are you familiar with the hospital I'm going to be giving birth in? What is your philosophy of birth? it's really important to know where that doula is coming from. I just did a postpartum yesterday, and the couple that we had supported mentioned to us that they had looked into some other services in the area and that they got the feeling with this particular doula, whom I don't know, and I don't want to know who it is, doesn't matter. But they said at least 10 to 15 different times they felt the doula saying and really pushing that they should have a home birth. And for this particular couple, they were planning on a hospital birth. So they said it kind of just didn't fit well with them. So my opinion is you should have that gut instinct to feel comfortable with this doula, that you connect, that there is some type of connection. And then, of course, the fee ranges are wide ranges across the country in how much it costs or what service fees run.
Right. And that can depend too on a doula's experience, the number of births she's attended. It's important to take that into consideration. Also, if your doula charges a fee to meet with you, it's important to honor that because she's a professional, just like your auto mechanic or your physician or your hairdresser. You don't ask them, hey, can I take you to coffee and pick your brain and see if I like you first? They are a professional, and I feel that really needs to be honored, especially if they've been in the field for 30 years like you have.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about when you're interviewing the doula?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Right,
Yes, when
right.
we're
Yeah, yeah,
interviewing.
yeah. Well, if you think about it, if somebody comes to your home to provide a service, say to check on the refrigerator or to fix something, regardless of what the outcome is, there is a service fee for that person's time and experience to come. So I can definitely see that and value that for sure. And different doulas run practices differently, and that's the uniqueness of commerce here in the United States, right? We service providers get to uniquely design how they feel their services should go. And that's why I tell people when people even call to interview me, I'll ask them, have you interviewed anybody else? I really would encourage them to, because if they ultimately end up choosing childbirth concierge, I want them to never look back and go, oh my gosh, I should have interviewed 3 or 4 people.
Right,
You want them to be happy with the service that they contract with.
right. It's really important to resonate with your doula because they will be there at one of your most intimate times of your
Vulnerable.
life. One of the
Hmm.
vulnerable, the most empowering. There's no other time like it. I'd also like you to touch on the role that we play when working with the partners and not just the mom, because sometimes partners can have an understandable assumption that we're going to take their place or we're going to take over as a doula.
Right. And so, yeah, when working with partners, when I am interviewing the client, and that is an interview that goes back and forth because my time is valuable, my experience is valuable, their time is valuable to them. So, we both want to make sure it's a good match. One of the questions I'm always asking is, how do you see your partner supporting you in labor? And then, if the partner's available, how they see themselves supporting mom in that process too. So I want to see where the plumb line is, where the understanding is before I even go to address the situation. I firmly believe that no doula could ever take the place of that partner. There is just not the relationship does not have the capacity to be intimate in the same way. And so the doula is an addition to that birthing team. And so finding out how this partner feels they see themselves being involved then also gives the doula cues on how the doula needs to interact with this couple. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the doula doesn't go in and take the place, they never could. And so a good skilled doula is always going to be assessing where that couple is, how they interact, and where she needs to kind of fit in a few things or step back. I have been at deliveries where I walk away going, wow, I really didn't do much because the partner was absolutely amazing. They stepped in, they just stepped up, if you will, and did what needed to be done. There were times when I might interject or make a few suggestions, but the bulk of the heavy weight being carried was done by the partner. And then there's times where I've done births where The partner is sitting back just because that's their comfort level. And I have stepped up to be more of the physical and the emotional support for that mom. It really is very key in the prenatal time to get a feel of where everybody is and their comfort and their expectation levels. And then you know how you are to, where you can better support instead of coming in and irping support where it may not be needed.
Right, right. And I do think that doulas can help partners to not feel so overwhelmed in the process, because birth can be overwhelming if you haven't experienced it before, and even if you have. And so I think we doulas can help the partner to have some guidance and not feel overwhelmed, and to help navigate this situation. And they can step back if they get overwhelmed, they can move forward if they do feel more comfortable. And just like you said, every partner has their own comfort level within supporting their partner, the mother of their child. And one way is not better than the other. I think sometimes there's this Cinderella aspect that my husband is going to support me through every single contraction, and he's going to hold my hand, and he's going to get in the birth pool with me. And some dads are really great, or partners are great at doing that. And some are just too overwhelmed. We need to honor where they're at. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No two people are the same, and they're so individualized and unique that really and truly, to me, that is in the essence of doula, is to be flexible and to know where to increase the support for this mom and to know when to step back. And if you think about any task that you have to do that is arduous, time consuming, hard, when you have somebody else that will be with you in that, it makes it more doable. And so oftentimes, one birth that I just did the other day, I said, "Have you eaten?" And the partner said no. And I said, "Okay, options are I can go get something for you, or you can go and I'll stay here." And they opted to actually have me go get them something because they wanted to stay with their partner. And that was great. I went and made sure they had got something to eat.
Yeah.
So it's a team.
Right, and partners can forget to eat. It's really important to eat, partners, very
Yeah.
important. Even if you think you're okay, and I can work 12-hour days without eating, but it's different when it's the birth of your child and the mom's ready to give birth and the baby's being born. There's so much happening. It's easy to get kind of blood sugar can drop, and you may not even realize that you're feeling woozy or something like that. So eating is important, very important. Sometimes too, we doulas can step in if a mom and her partner have had a long early labor and they arrive at the place of birth. Labor's getting active, and you can tell the partner is just so exhausted and needs a little nap. I like to check in and say, "I can tell you're so tired. Would you like to lay down?" And check with the mom. Is it okay if your partner lies down for a little while? Because you're going to need them when it's time to push, and you're going to need them once the baby's born. And we don't want your partner exhausted. So they take a little nap, and we'll fill in the gap, and then they can be more refreshed to help you through this.
Right. I smile when I think about it. You and I, a few years back, it's actually been more than a few, we had a mom who found herself going into the end of this pregnancy single. And she hired you as her early labor doula and hired me as the end labor doula. Do you
Mhm.
remember that? And I'm just so amazed that she had the wisdom to be able to do that because she understood the value of support.
Right. And she didn't want either one of us exhausted.
Mhm. Yep. And I always tell couples too when I work with them, I'm trying to gauge myself as a doula of when to get there when things are active. And you're going to need me for, say, like if you've done that 12-hour, 24-hour pre or prodromal type labor, and then things are getting active and everybody's exhausted, you're going to need me to be the fresh, happy face that's like, "Come on, team, we've got this." Allow partner to take that rest. If I'm from the get-go, I'm right along with you, then all three of us are all wiped out. So it is years of experience. And once again, when you're hiring a doula, that plays in too, is what her experience is. I always say, it's not like you're buying let's say, a pencil holder cup. And how good is this pencil holder cup, right? It's not a tangible item when you hire a doula. What you're hiring is her years of experience and her ability to articulate appropriately what her years of experience are into your unique birth situation. So that's the difference. I always tell people, obviously, if you can financially afford somebody that has experience, obviously there's going to be a benefit to that. Now, can somebody that's just starting out, new as a doula, still provide great labor support and still have a good birth? Yes. But there is something to say, the wisdom in just the season of time of someone like you and myself, Michelle, that have just years. That's why I've made a concerted effort in 2019 to really start mentoring and helping develop the younger doulas coming in, because I do have experience, and experience is valuable.
Right. Right. And that's exactly what you're paying for lack of better words, is that experience. You're so right. It is not tangible. With birth, it's so unpredictable. You could be with a family for 6, 8 hours. You could be with a family 38 hours,
Mm-hmm.
but they bring the same amount of experience to that birth, no matter how long they're there. And that, like you said, with the MasterCard, it's priceless.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
Yeah, it's hard to place a value on doulas. And yet at the same time, when I'm training doulas, I always tell them, you can think your value is 5,000 a delivery, and you certainly can charge 5,000. But if nobody's hiring you at 5,000, how good are you at supporting people if you've priced yourself so up? And that's a great topic for another
Podcast, yes.
podcast. Yeah. But you can charge more than the market will bear, but you won't be busy. I always tried in my life to pace myself where people can. I'm a birth junkie. I love to do birth. So I rather price my services where they're obtainable than to price myself out of the league of people hiring me. For consumers, they really do need to do their due diligence and ask, what are the years of experience? If somebody says, well, I've got 4 months and they're charging up at the same rate I'm charging, well, if they can get it, okay. But really and truly, in my opinion, it is the value of the years experience that make the difference.
Right.
It really is.
And as you're speaking, the ability to articulate with the staff, whether it's at home, at the birth center, in the hospital. If a hospital says, this is our doula, we love working with this doula, that means something. That means that doula has worked very, very hard to create that rapport with the staff, and the staff appreciates it. And that is also invaluable.
Well, I should say nobody, but who wants to be in a time that is vulnerable, powerful, key life experience, and having them against us mentality? Or who wants to be where there's division and you're having to feel like you've got to be on guard the entire time? I mean, in my career, there are people that have interviewed me and I'm listening to their birth experience, and I will say to them, have you thought about delivering in a birth center? Because what they have their eyes set on really isn't super conducive to how systems in the hospital work. And why set themselves up for that if they can be in a birth center or at a home birth and it just be the norm for them and what they're wanting to do? You know me, Michelle, I'm for wherever people choose to deliver. I don't sway one way or the other. I'm all about supporting parents. But why put yourself in that position? Now, if it's because insurance or because of other things, then let's do the work that we need to come to a place where we can be accepting that we are going to deliver in the hospital, and then do our due diligence to work through those fears and concerns.
Right. And to have families be able to advocate for themselves, and also to respect that you're on their turf. Or as Adriana Bobler here, an amazing doula here in our area, she said once, you're going to somebody else's house. And if you go to somebody's house, do you walk in and tell them exactly how you want everything to be? And I'm not saying not to advocate for ourselves.
Right.
Central Florida, sorry, it's raining. This is Central Florida. It rains a lot here if you hear thunder. But I think what's important too, and I know I've said this before, but if your doula says, oh, it sounds like you want this type of birth, this hospital will really help fit your needs better, or this caregiver, because I always say you can't go to Taco Bell and buy a fish sandwich, right?
That's right.
If you're looking for this type of birth, we doulas know. The childbirth educators know. The yoga instructors know. They hear the stories, but I think especially we as doulas, we're in the trenches. We, especially if we go to different hospitals, we can tell you which one's going to help best fit
Your
what
need.
you want. Yes, what you want for your birth, because it's your birth. It's not ours. And we want what you want, but we also want you to help you to get that birth that you want.
Right.
It's so heartbreaking to me to have someone say after their baby was born, "Oh, I'm really disappointed. This wasn't what I wanted in my baby's birth." It's just heartbreaking to me.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if you're planning an out-of-hospital birth or birth center birth, sometimes you have to transfer, and that changes the plans, and a doula can help mitigate that too. But I just feel it's important if you're asking her where to go and she recommends this physician and this hospital according to what you're wanting, then take that into consideration. And that's different than having somebody tell you 10 times, like you mentioned earlier, oh, you should really do a home birth. If you don't want a home birth, then okay, we're going to this hospital. Let me help you navigate that.
Right. Absolutely.
Let's get you the best birth we can. Let's honor where we're at and let's work with their protocols and really help make this the best experience that we can.
Absolutely.
I have one last question for you, please. What bit of wisdom, because you have a lot of it, I'm going to be interviewing you again, please, but what bit of wisdom would you like to share with our birthies families?
That in itself is a deep question.
I like deep questions.
Wisdom. I think you have to trust your gut instinct.
Yes.
In this world, and especially in the seasons where we are in our country, there is so much fear and so much unrest. And I believe that we are in process of women recognizing that through the ages somewhere, our voice has been diminished, our ability to believe in ourselves has been stolen. And so we're working on reclaiming that we are powerful human beings, that we can choose powerfully, that we know what our body needs. But whether it's cultural, I'm not here to try to figure out exactly what that is right now. Something has stolen from women. And I mean, if that was the case, if we believed and did what we really needed to do, I don't know that we would be in the situations that we are here in the birthing arena. So my wisdom would be to the listeners is to take time to sit and to really contemplate what is important to you and what you really believe about your ability to birth. And in fact, I would tell you to take a piece of paper and write down positive and negative. And all the thoughts that you have are positive, write on the column, and all the negative. And if you find that your column is of negative is way big, I want you to begin to look at what is 180 degrees from that negative item that you've written down. So come up with a solution to whatever that pollution of thought is. Does that make sense? So, because our ability to believe in ourselves and our ability to give birth has been stolen from us, we're in that process of reclaiming that back. So very powerful and wise exercises to do this, where you do the positives and the negatives, and then find an answer to that negative, and then cut the piece of paper in half and take all the negative thoughts and have some type of symbolic gesture with you and your partner where you've looked at them, you've identified, and you're releasing them. I don't care if you throw it in the garbage. I don't care if you light it on fire. You can chop it up in a million pieces. You can pulverize it. But something that signifies a demarcation line of I'm choosing to let go of all those negative thoughts, because the brain is very powerful. And I'm choosing to embrace all of these positive thoughts. And this is what I'm going to project into the birth of my baby. I'm going to project all the positive and let go of all the negative. So that's my wisdom offerings.
Yes, yes, to come from a place of doing your work to get ready for this birth and to step into faith versus fear. And can you please say that quote? That quote has stuck with me for 20 years, and I love it.
Yes. So fear and faith are equal in our dimension as we understand human life here as we see it. Faith and fear are equal in our dimension. They both project into the future, and they both demand to be fulfilled. Which one will you fulfill?
I have goosebumps, got bumps. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So thank you so much for being here with me today and sharing all your wisdom. And I'm a little teary because thank you. I'm going to cry. Thank you for everything that you have taught me. Thank you for being my mentor. Thank you for shaping me into the doula that I am today, because I feel you gave me such an incredible foundation to help me do this work and serve families. So thank you.
You are welcome. And this is so much bigger than just me and you. You know, I just was a small part in the grand picture, and I'm grateful for you in my life.
Thank you. Thank you.
This has been amazing. Let's do it again
Yes,
soon.
we will. We will. If you would like to know more about Kathy Bradley and her amazing work, please reach out to her at childbirthconcierge.com. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends and rate and recommend on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you for listening. Remember, this will be your baby's only birth, and the experience belongs to you and your baby. It's not your friends, it's not your partners, your siblings, nor your midwives or doctors. It's yours. Do your research, find your inner wisdom, and learn to trust it. You already know your baby better than anyone. There's no right way to give birth. There's simply the way that feels best for you.
For more great conversations like these, or to find out more information and access Michelle's library of amazing guests, go to birtheaseservices.com/podcast. For more information on the Birthease method, Michelle's classes, meditations, and other services, go to birtheaseservices.com.